Welcome back to Shed the Debt. I'm Patty Lovett-Reed. We have a treat for you today. I'm joined by someone who knows the ins and outs of CRA so that we will know what's going on. Scott, you worked with CRA for a number of years. Can you give us a little bit of your background?
Sure, absolutely. I was with the CRA for roughly a decade in a collections capacity. So I would have been the person that went and visited you at your home and said, "Give me the money, please."
Yeah, you would have been the guy that terrified us.
But I'm a nice guy, so it worked out okay because generally speaking, if I walked into somebody's home and I said, "There's a reason I'm here, we haven't been able to contact you, you haven't responded to phone calls or mail or what have you, you look like a nice person. If you had 50,000 in your pocket, you'd give it to me, but obviously you don't, so let's work something out."
Actually, that is a nice way to go about it, because if someone is told that they are being audited by CRA, it's terrifying. It's terrifying, particularly if you're in a position or not in a position to pay.
Mhm. Well, the thing about audits, it's not always the debt takes place after an audit. Sometimes it's just a matter of you've fallen behind because of the market, because of if you're an individual, and these days sometimes have 2 and 3 jobs, and you're not getting the proper source deductions taken away for the totality of your income, then you're going to owe money at the end of the year.
Right.
If you're a business and business isn't great, then sometimes it's going to be the case that you're going to use what you should have paid in the way of source deductions or HST or corporate tax to keep your business afloat. And that's how you find yourself in jeopardy.
All right, so you find yourself in jeopardy. How long before CRA starts jumping up and down and saying, we're going to get aggressive with you? I know the interest clock starts right away, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And the interest at this point in time is roughly 10% per annum.
It's a big
So
amount.
it is. It's gone up steadily over the course of the last decade to where we are now. If it comes to the knowledge of CRA that you owe money, you will get a legal warning. It'll give you 14 days to respond. If you don't respond within 14 days, legal action can take place and usually does. So it's all about keeping the lines of communication open, talking to the CRA and saying, "Listen, this is how I got here. How do we get out?" And again, that gets into your ability to pay, making sure there's nothing nefarious going on in the way of, you've cross-mingled your expenses from business to personal, et cetera, Or, there's an awful lot of folks out there that happen to be really good tradesmen, but not good bookkeepers,
Right.
not good accountants. And if you're working on a job and you're trying to get things done, you don't always pay attention to that aspect of the business.
Right.
And so if they don't have the proper support network in the background, that's when they end up in trouble.
When you say talk to a CRA representative and try to work things out, how responsive are they?
This scenario,
How responsive are you? No.
well, I was, but the general scenario goes along the lines of a conversation saying, "Pay me now."
Right.
And the taxpayer says, "I can't do that." "Pay me in 6 months." "I can't do that." "Go borrow the money." "I can't do that." "Okay, prove it." So you have to go to your bank and get some kind of formal document that says, "I applied, declined, not going to happen." And then you get into, okay, well, we want this paid as soon as possible. We need full financial disclosure. And that gets into every aspect of your business or personal. And based on the assets, liabilities, income and expenses, come up with a figure at the end. Now, are they always accepting of that? No, because they want things paid off as soon as possible. And so it's not the case that if you say, I can stretch this over 8 years, they're going to say, that's not
the way we're doing things.
No. So in my former life, I think the lengthy arrangement I got was 49 months. And that was only because of the nature of the client. It was a special needs school, and it wouldn't be, a very good look for the CRA to close them down for money. But generally speaking, we would try to get something in the way of 18 to 36 months.
Now, this sounds like a plan, but I would argue that maybe the average person out there wouldn't have the skill set to negotiate with someone like yourself.
That's true, and it's true because what happens is when you get on the phone with the CRA, they can say and do a lot of things that maybe they shouldn't, but you don't know what they should or shouldn't say or can or cannot say.
Can we just talk about that? What does that mean?
So there is the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. So basically there's 16 points there to deal with individuals and or businesses. You have to be dealt with, say, professionalism, compassion. You have the right to put in a service complaint without fear of reprisal. You have the right to full and free information. If they have come up with something in the way of an assessment of any kind, you can find out why. So there's a lot of things going on in the background there. People don't necessarily know about, and as well as that, if you don't have the understanding that they can't just look into your bank account and pluck it away, then there's an issue, right? I've had experience with agents that have phoned somebody who owns a business and said, "I'm going to take your house." So the person on the other end of the phone says, "What do I do?" Not understanding that as a director of the company, they can't necessarily take the house because there's a whole process that has to be gone through in the background to decide whether you are actually liable or not. So there's a lot of different ins and outs. And so what we try to do is certainly get an idea of the financial picture that's behind the situation. How did we get here? How do we get out? Put together all the information. The full financial disclosure would include bank records and the receipts and what have you. And they're looking for necessary versus discretionary spending, discretionary versus non-discretionary spending. So it's
a lot of work.
It is.
It's a lot of work to defend yourself. So what I'm wondering is, I am a special advisor to Goldhart, and given the economic climate out there, I have to believe that there are individuals and businesses who are behind on their taxes.
Absolutely.
By reaching out, it doesn't mean you have to, when you owe money and you can't pay, that you have to declare bankruptcy.
No.
But could you work out a consumer proposal with the government?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a little bit of a difference between bankruptcy and consumer proposal, obviously.
Yeah.
Both will serve to reduce the debt. Both will stop legal action from continuing on. Both will stop the interest. Consumer proposal is a little more flexible. If you are bankrupt, you cannot be a director of a company, whereas as a consumer proposal, you can. So you can still have some flexibility to operate there. And it doesn't get rid of absolutely everything you owe, but it's going to be significantly reduced such that you can, find yourself in a position to get out of a hole.
And that's huge. One of the things that I've been asked to do on occasion is be a director, be involved in companies as an officer in some sort of capacity. It triggered a thought when you made reference to businesses, and a business doesn't make it. What happens to the advisors or the board of directors?
Well, the directors can be held liable under a number of different sections of the acts, various acts. Section 227 of the Income Tax Act, Section 323 of the HST Excise Tax Act, and perhaps...
was it those? Yeah.
Okay. And perhaps under Section 160, which is non-arm's length transfer. So all of these things come into play. With respect to 227, that has to do with source deductions. If you can prove that you have done your due diligence within the company, there are a number of different ways that you can explain the situation in that somebody else was responsible for these things, you had no knowledge of these things, you did whatever you could to the best of your ability to curb any kind of problems, then there's perhaps a defense there, but otherwise you're held personally liable.
What would you tell someone watching this right now that owes CRA money, or you're a business owner?
Well, communication is key. You have to keep the lines of communication open. The simple fact of the matter is, when you're talking about CRA, they all, as a collector, generally have 200 plus accounts in their inventory. And so it's kind of formulaic in the way of, I've sent you a letter. They usually make 1 to 2 calls, send you a letter indicating this is a legal warning. If you don't respond within a certain amount of time, I believe now it's 14 days, it used to be 30, then they can and will take legal action because they just have to kind of tick off a box. We can't think of them as robots, but they do have certain unspoken mandates and quotas: close accounts, collect money, take legal action. So legal action could be, of course, if they have knowledge of your bank account, they will freeze the bank account.
Right.
It could be if you're a T4 employee, then they will garnish your wages. Security in the way of a lien on a property. So there's a number of different things that they can do.
Can I ask you, is there a dollar amount that becomes a trigger?
Yeah.
What triggers?
Well, it's not as big as you might think. It used to be, I believe, $1,500. It might be $2,500 now.
Yeah,
So
it's not as big as I thought it would be.
If you owe more than $2,500, at some point in time, somebody will make a call to you, and then you just roll the dice and see what happens.
What is the last thought someone watching this you want to leave with them that is in a difficult situation?
Call a professional. I mean, you've got to not only, again, as we kind of revisit, you might be a great plumber, but you're a terrible bookkeeper. Make sure you've got all those backstops in place such that you don't find yourself in this position. If you didn't do that, and now you find yourself owing the CRA money, seek out professional advice, and whether that's first going to an accountant or rather phone somebody like myself here at Goldhart, and we will help you through the process and tell you exactly what your options are, what the timelines are, and all of these things. Because with timelines are very important, we also have to remember that if an individual or a company is assessed, there is a period where you can object.
Oh, okay.
And if you object, it lengthens the time frame within which you can pay. If the objection is received well, great. If not, it's still going to, there's so many different kind of aspects to the way an account is worked that time is on your side if you do these things, right?
And
Similarly,
the experience of someone who knows how to deal with them.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly wouldn't know how to deal with them.
Right.
And I'm in the business.
Similarly, we've got things like, depending on the situation, taxpayer relief applications, which come into play when perhaps there's a great deal of financial hardship.
Okay.
I've dealt with them where there are generally 5 different kind of qualifiers for that. One of them is CRA error, which probably happens more than we want to admit or know about, but it's hard to dig into the file and figure it out. Mm-hmm. CRA delay, which can happen to a certain extent just because of the volumes of files they're dealing with. But more so it gets into financial hardship, or you've had a natural disaster, a fire or flood in your home, negated you from being able to file for whatever length of time.
Right.
And so there are some considerations. It's not a get out of jail free card, but it can help. Similarly, if you've got some things that you're a great plumber, but you're not a great bookkeeper, if you find out after the fact, perhaps, that you should have declared something and you did not, if the CRA hasn't contacted you with respect to that particular aspect of your account within 1 year, it used to be up to 10, but now it's 1, you can file for the voluntary disclosure program.
Yeah. And
that will reduce possibly some things. But again, there's so many moving parts, it's difficult to figure out on your own.
Okay, so my final question to you then is, what's the cost? Like, I'm assuming the cost to hire someone like yourself is a lot less than going to court.
Oh, absolutely. You don't go to court.
Or you don't even go to court.
The only time you
or
go,
someone seizes your assets.
Yeah, but I mean, the only time you would go to court is if you had filed an objection.
Right.
And the objection went to the Tax Court of Canada. Other than that, you're always dealing with collections. You're always talking to them about how much do I have to pay? How long do I have to pay? So, I mean, again, lines of communication, keep them open. Don't try to do it yourself. Understand what you have to, absolutely, and don't absolutely have to give them up as information. But
Cost?
the cost, it varies, and it depends on what the expected length of time is to solve a situation, and that depends on the complexity of the situation. That depends on how much money is owing on the part of the taxpayer. A few different things. So, can we ballpark it?
Yeah.
Sure.
Good. We want the numbers.
I mean, you're not gonna call somebody like myself if you don't owe more than 20, 30, 40,000.
Okay.
And then we'll get into maybe, $2,500 to $3,000 to take a look at the problem.
Options and solutions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what we try to do more often than not is do a fixed fee for a finite amount of time, as opposed to a retainer, which can, if I'm on the phone for an hour waiting on hold for somebody to CRA, you don't want to be paying me $300 an hour.
I absolutely do not.
Right.
But I do want to pay you for your expertise, because that $300 an hour could be hugely beneficial in the long run.
But if we've got a flat fee for you for $3,000 over the course of 6 months, because these things do take time because of the volume on the other side of the CRA, but also because we deal with an awful lot of unsophisticated taxpayers, and they don't know exactly what they need to do or want to do. And they do need some hand-holding and probably a referral here or there. So things can take a bit of time. So we like to make them comfortable that they've got the time to do it.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. Thank you. So there you have it. If you owe money to CRA, and it could be as little as $1,500, maybe $2,500, it may be in your best interest to see if you can get an expert working with you, not against you, in order to resolve the problem and move forward. I've been joined by Scott Hannay. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you the next time on Shed the Debt.